Exciting day. Today we're going to build a 190 mile an hour RC car on camera, A to Z, share all the shticks, all the shenanigans, all the secrets, all the gearing, everything. And then we're going to take it to a brand new runway, test it, and then one of you guys, maybe you, are going to win this one for like $2. Link in the description if you want to register. It's been forever. I was developing a ton of products for those RC cars to make them faster, stronger. If you go to perfectpassrc.com, you'll see what I'm talking about. But anyway, you know what's up? Yeah. What? No. You see, here's the deal. Everyone is making quad motors. They're super cool. They're sexy. I get it. And dual motors, same thing. But the real pinnacle, the pure RC experience, is the challenge of getting a single motor, 2 batteries, 1 ESC to 190, almost 200 miles an hour. I think this is pure RCing. And for that, you need the best of the best, the cream of the crop. You have to drive the best. You have to use the best. Alright, now that we got our levels right, guys, don't be afraid to let it sit for about 10 minutes just so it can level itself up to 100k CST for the rear, 500k CST for the front. GP5 ring gears. Don't be afraid of leaving some of the stock fluid on them. It's not really a big deal as long as the majority of it is exactly the viscosity you want. I already prepped, obviously, those bulkheads, those differential cases. Once you're actually putting some fluid inside your differentials, make sure these holes are kept clean, because if not, it's going to counteract your Loctites. Just wanted to show you guys the difference between a normal differential that comes with the car, night and day. When it comes to shimming, what we're trying to do is to make sure that the differential actually sits nicely inside but goes extremely smooth when it comes to the relations between the ring gear and the input shaft inside. In this particular case, 1 on the right, 2 on the left. The next step is pretty straightforward. Just install our bulkhead and the GPM parts with the hinge pins and the Perfect Pass arms. Really nothing to it, pretty straightforward. For the front, both the GPM and both the Perfect Pass carbon fiber as well as this Arma plastic piece, all the parts and everything is going to be listed in the description down below. One of the biggest reasons cars are all over the place is that these are a little bit too tight. Once you're done tightening these, you want to make sure that it's super loose while being in there. Saved you guys the hassle and build everything off camera, but like I said, we build the shocks from scratch. Everything is Vitavan, Perfect Pass and GPM. For those who cares, I can actually play a clip about 10 seconds. Using CVDs for the front and rear, Speedrun springs by Perfect Pass. We're going to list everything in the description, so you don't really have to buy an Arma Infraction or an Arma Limitless and then take it all apart and build a car. You can just buy the parts and just build your own car. The car you've just seen from the previous raffle was won. Igor Rudik. I'm gonna put his name on the screen. I shipped it to him. He received it. He was happy. I think he bought like 50 tickets or something like that. But hey, it worked, right? Anyway, let's install these and take it from there when it comes to the front. All right, brilliant. So the rear is completely down. This is how everything looks, of course, for those who wants to build exactly the same.
This is how everything sits. You probably want to get yourself a nice screw kit for this entire build, just so you can actually build it start to finish. Let's build this one and see how that looks. Okay, and it came out pretty nice. For those who wants to build the same, this is exactly how everything looks. Now for the fun part, we're going to install the PPS motor mount single, of course, because that's a single build, 2028 1700 kV by Castle Creations, and we're going to install the ultimate drive shaft kit by Perfect Pass. We provide them also with extra bearings and pins. I haven't had a customer yet who told me that they had to replace it, but if you do, they're coming with it. Titanium spool, of course, with those little interlock pockets, and some extra drive cups. Anyway, let me switch these real quick for you. The Kevin Talbot style. Boom! Boom!
Come on, Raz, you little
All right, brilliant. Okay, now that we've installed the spool and the drive shaft, of course, we put those little rubber O-ring inside those cups. So we have minimum and very nice cushioning on the movement here. Super smooth. Okay, the next stage is placement, of course, of the actual systems, LiPo batteries and ESC, in this case, the XLX2 by Castle Creations. Now, we're gonna go pretty simple. We're not gonna go too fancy here. We already have the motor installed like we showed you guys before, and the drive shafts. Those batteries are huge. I'm using obviously the SMC SRD. They're just amazing. I love this company. Because they're so big, I think I'm gonna stay simple and keep these here in the front, of course. Try to keep it kind of balanced in a way. The ESC will sit here right next to the motor, so we can actually shorten those wires to reduce their resistance. Anyway, nice quick montage, and we'll see you when it's all ready. Let's talk about soldering real quick. This is very personal for many drivers and users and builders. They're saying, well, you have to tin the wires first, you have to tin the bullets first. Well, let me show you how I do it. What I pretty much do is I just fill it up and I just wait for the solder to actually do its thing and actually sit in there. In a minute, you'll see how the wire actually drinks it. Now, don't forget, this is possible when you're using 4060 rosin cores. And you see right now, this is still what some might call a cold solder. It's still not there because the wire hasn't drink it yet. You have to really sit there and wait for it to happen, and only then you have a solid connection. I'm gonna try and move a little bit so you guys can see it better, and in a second it will happen. The miracle. Now that it actually drank it, now it's one piece, man. It's going nowhere. Obviously I made sure that the wire is actually touching the bottom of the bullet so it's not hanging in the air. Okay, so I took you guys off the tripod real quick just so you guys can see it better. I'm gonna try and focus and zoom and whatnot. You see, it just became like one piece. Another trick that I wanted to show you guys, this wire is obviously getting very hot with how we solder it, and sometimes, like in this case, it will be very close to a different solder joint that we don't want to actually damage. Just a fresh one. I'm actually folding it and then I'm just cooling the cable with this. It takes 2 seconds. Also, it cleans the cable at the same time very quickly, getting rid of all that jizz for the heat shrink that is actually coming. Another pro tip, if you want a really clean work, get your bullet inside your ESC all the way down. You see, it doesn't go all the way since it's a QS8, and then push your heat shrink all the way down, well, kind of all the way down, and then do just a little bit, just so you know where it's at. And now I can actually pull it because I don't want the heat gun to actually hurt my ESC. Now, let's take it down a little bit more. Now I can actually get it out and complete the job without hurting my ESC. Gorgeous! Another neat trick for wire management. If you want to have a nice, clean and tidy setup, roll any wire on whatever screwdriver you got. A little bit of heat gun. Be very, very careful. Don't do too much. Once you're done, you leave it for a couple of seconds, you pull it out, and this is how that looks. All right, now let's have a quick chat about the Castle Creations XLX2 connector. Most of you guys know that this will be, of course, for the fan. This will be your switch. This will be your main wire, and then you'll have an aux wire. 99.9% of you guys will never need this aux wire, either for aux features or if you're actually asking the BEC for more than 7 amps. Most of you guys will not. If you're using just a normal perfect pass servo, of course, they're very, very efficient and a good receiver. This will be lower than 7 amps, so you can obviously get rid of this wire just for nicer cable management. The easiest way I found is to actually push it inside the connector using an X-Acto knife. I'm trying to do it behind the camera, so bear with me. Just lift those little tabs, 3 of them, of course, and just pull, and that's it. This is how you do it, and then I just press them in there. This is ready to go. The main wire is the only wire we need. This one, you can keep it discarded, whatever you wish. Okay, so once we have our mark on the actual chassis, we can actually bring this battery strap holder and kind of simulate where it's going to be, but how are we going to know where to actually drill those holes here? So here's a nifty trick. I've showed it a couple of times on my channel. Find the position and put some double-sided glue to the chassis. Now that it's straight and it's on it, put some saliva on the actual glue so it's not as sticky. I know it's a little bit disgusting, but it is what it is. And then bring this little body over. Try to be as straight as you can. Press it firmly and remove. Then once you have the imprint, spring-loaded center punch. One time, spring-loaded center punch on the other impression. And then once you do, remove the tape. And you have exactly the impressions of where these are, right here. All right, we flip the batteries, 2 sides of dual lock, and then we actually unpeel it, flip the batteries, and stick them in the car once we have everything ready. The dual lock makes sure that the batteries are not moving forward or backwards, and then the strap is holding everything together tightly. Guys, when you're soldering this connector into the ESC, make sure it's connected to another connector to align these up, because if not, once this is really, really hot, if there's no support, those can actually move a little bit inside, which is something you don't want. Once you're done soldering everything and the connector is cooled, you can actually pull it out of it. And then we know that these are as straight as they can be. By the way, to bridge between the LiPos, hopefully you guys can see it. QS8 connectors as well. I took the male and the female from the QS8, of course, and used them as connectors. Now guys, when it comes to the system, I use the Futaba R2006GS. Comes with diversity antennas, 2 antennas, and longer range. And I actually extend one of those antennas. I made many videos about how to do that. I'm a huge believer in gyros. Once you install your gyro, make sure it actually touches one of the walls in the box, just so it's a lot more solid. And we're using a perfect pass launch control, which I'm a huge believer in as well. Okay guys, let's talk calibration now. Don't connect your 8S monstrosity to your ESC for your calibration or for the first time you actually connect your ESC. Instead, use a nice 3 or 4S battery. It's more than enough and it might protect your ESC if you did something wrong, okay? Soon we're going to talk about EPA. Perfect Pass is connected in series between the receiver and the ESC. Throttle trim on the remote is set to all the way negative, B100, that's brake 100. Perfect Pass all the way to the left. Don't over squeeze, just go lightly full throttle, and here we go. Confirmation. Beautiful. What I usually do is I just turn it off when it's done. Now that we're still connected, of course, Perfect Pass was all the way to the left. Now, once we turn it off, Perfect Pass all the way to the right. This is for full delay. Now Perfect Pass is calibrated and the ESC is calibrated with the remote, with the receiver. And that's pretty much it. Let's talk about steering real quick. Let me just turn it on. You want to make sure that you set your EPA, your endpoint adjustment when it comes to steering, especially if you're using the Perfect Pass Monster servo, which is a very, very powerful servo. Here's why. I'm trying to make sure that once I actually turn right all the way, it's going right all the way to the movement and that's it, not more, because we can actually bend it or break it here, especially when you have a strong servo. So left and right. You see, this is such a responsive and such a powerful servo that you really want to make sure that you set your EPA. So all the way right, all the way left, and it's not going more than the actual movement of the servo and this bell crank. All right, Perfect Pass now is all the way to the right. Let's give it a little test. Motor is not connected anywhere, that's good. Because I'm using 3S, I'm not afraid of overspeeding the system, of course. So it looks like Perfect Pass is good. Obviously, we can actually change the delay. If we want less delay, we turn it off, of course. So we remove power from the receiver. Let's turn it about halfway there. Let's try it again. Turn it on. And let's turn it off again, just trying to show you guys different behavior with the Perfect Pass. All the way to the left is no delay at all. And turning it off, I usually try and time my delay with 3S. It's not really a problem because you're not overspeeding the motor, especially with the 1700 kV. I usually time it to around 6-7 seconds. So let's go all the way to the right, just a little bit to the left. Let's see how that looks. Once we calibrate our ESC like we did in the beginning, there's just no need to recalibrate it. You just turn off power, set your delay, turn it on. That's it. And then it stays that way indefinitely. So okay, I would say that's a little bit too slow. Of course, every system will be different. I'm not going to actually bore you a little bit too much with that one. I'll take it a little bit more left. I think now we're golden. Let's put a timer on the screen actually. We should be golden. Let's see how many seconds that takes. And that might be it. Steering is set, ESC is calibrated. Let's move on to the next stage. Okay, the next stage is mesh, of course. Before we set up the mesh, because it really matters what direction the motor is going when we set up mesh, we have to make sure that the motor is actually going to the right direction. Since this one is a sensored setup, we cannot just switch one of those wires here, of course, of the phases. We actually have to go inside the ESC and fix it from the software. So let's actually turn it on and see what direction we got. I just brought the motor closer to the gear so we can see exactly what happens. were reversed. Let's actually go into the ESC and fix it together. That'll be a great opportunity for us to actually go through the entire calibration of the ESC from the software side. Another cool quick tip, if you're too lazy to open your receiver box, no problem, worry not, because you can just remove that Castle Creations XLX2 connector, receiver harness if you will, and make yourself a nice male-to-male cable that just goes straight into the ESC. Once you're done, just pull it, put the connector back in there. All right, let's see what we got here. I already made a full video on my channel if you want to look for it when it comes to Castle Creations, calibration and whatnot, but let's just go through the quick speedrun setup. Go to basic, cutoff voltage, you want to change it to no cutoff, because if not, it's just going to cut on you once the voltage drop a little bit too much. Change it to no cutoff. Reverse type, I like it with reverse. I change my BEC to 7.5, especially with that Futaba and especially with the Perfect Pest Monster servo. They can definitely take it. Hold on, let me just fix the brightness here. Sorry about that. I'm not disabling the idle beeps, not disabling the error beeps, and I'm disabling the deadlock full warning just to have it. Break him out 50%, start with that, especially on a single, that's good enough. Drag brake 0, drag brake ramp, you don't need it. We're going to go to power. Start power is low. Max power is 100%. Reverse percentage, 50 is a little bit too much. We can actually change it to 25%. Punch control, 0, disabled, that's fine. Advanced, you're not touching it. Motor direction. Like we said, we're going to actually reverse it. So we ask it to be reversed. Motor type is fine, and 10 degrees for now for the 2028 1700 kV is enough. Of course, we're talking with a Y motor. Y motor is up to about 12 degrees of timing. From that moment on, you're going to get into the diminishing returns. So we did that. That's great. We're just checking that the throttle curve is actually not in there, that it's actually linear. We're checking that the brake curve is the same. Software you can update if you haven't updated. It depends on when you see this video, of course. And then we're just going to go and do update. So now we're updating everything, and this is your setup for speedrun. Let's turn on the light because it's getting a little bit too romantic. Okay, now that we got the direction right and figured out our ESC, we're going to set up mesh. To set up the mesh, we're actually going to open these, but not too much. We don't really want our motor to be too loose. We want it to be about where it's supposed to be when it comes to leveling once we actually have the mesh, because you don't want to set up mesh and then everything changes once you close these screws and your entire motor moves, right? So we're going to open these just a little bit, even close a little bit just so we have some resistance. We're going to actually gauge that in a minute. I'm going to open this one up. Let's talk about mesh real quick. Mesh is that the gears are as close as they can be without resistance, and we're actually going to try this on the fly. So now, obviously, if you're not familiar with this motor mount, the more you close the screw, the closer it gets. The more you open, of course, the motor actually comes towards you. So we're going to set up an about point, and then we're going to actually set our throttle trim to actually give us a little bit of punch, and then we can actually play around with it. We're trying to actually spool up without load and then play around with it. I'm going to be a little bit too aggressive just so you guys can see exactly what's happening and what I'm looking for. I want to make sure that I don't have too much resistance going into the gear, and I want to make sure there is not too much resistance once the pressure angles are not aligned well if I'm a little bit too far out. Here's how that looks. Right now, the mesh is perfect. Now it's as smooth as it can be. I can actually verify by seeing my distance here, but this will ensure that I don't have too much resistance in or out. Okay, the next stage is probably one of the most interesting and important things about this build: setup, of course. Your setup will be dictated by the size of your wheel. So once you have a certain size that you like, this is 96 millimeter. once you have a certain size, you kind of want to stick with it or to be within that range, because if you set up your entire car for 96, as this example, millimeter, and then you switch to like 102 or 93 millimeter, your entire setup, your ride, your caster, camber, everything will change. So 96 millimeter, these are BSR teals, but for 190s, you can also use the BSR purple. They're on the website as well, BSR purple and BSR purple low profile, which already comes 96 millimeter. When it comes to the rear, if you're using Perfect Pass equipment, I just wanted to show you guys how everything looks. This is actually installed on the second hole. This is about the tension of the spring. Obviously, Perfect Pass speedrun springs, like we said. And I'm trying to make sure that the rear is higher than the front. Why? Because under load, we're going to have a little squat. And I want to make sure that under that squat, the car will level itself. So it's going to look something like so. When it comes to the front, obviously, the car will tell us a story, because the left side, is a lot heavier, obviously, than the right side. It's probably going to be about a millimeter or two. Let's actually take a look and see exactly what we got here. I'm using sometimes my fingers, but if you want to go a little bit more fancy, you can use one of those gauges. When it comes to set screws, I recommend using red Loctite for those little set screws on the aluminum arms, because the holes here in threads have a little bit of lower resistance, of course, than plastic A-arms. So red Loctite recommended for these. We want our entire load in the front to be within the shock. So here I set up some spacers in the shocks. I haven't showed you guys all the details, because with the new Perfect Pass aluminum A-arms, you're not gonna need that as well. The new aluminum A-arms come with 5 different holes here, so you don't have to touch your shock, you don't have to open it. You just set your shock a little bit more outside. That eliminates the need for all those spacers and all the shenanigans inside the shocks, makes the build a lot easier. When it comes to this one, let's actually gauge this the height. On the left side, it gets stuck on the 4, meaning that our left side is about 13 millimeters, and obviously the right will be a millimeter or 2 difference. Yeah, so here 5 can go through, 6 is getting stuck, so we know that the front here is 15 millimeter from the ground, 13 millimeter from the ground. I like the 13 millimeter, it's about a finger high in a squeezed finger way. 13 millimeter on that splitter. I'm probably going to close the set screw on this side, like I said, just a little bit so they are even. Like we said, we're not counting on the set screws to take most of the load, because we're going to hurt our chassis. We're counting on what's in the shocks or the shock positioning when it comes to the installation. That's what we're counting on to take most of the load. For the final touches, surely you can play with set screws a little bit just to change a millimeter, millimeter and a half here and there. Let me actually do it and show you how that looks. Another thing that I want you to confirm is how spongy the front is, because while you're actually driving, this will happen a lot. And if you want to make sure that the chassis is flexing, moving, and jumping while the car is still with contact with the actual road. So you want it to obviously have enough resistance. The Perfect Pass springs will make sure of it, but you want it to be rather spongy. Okay, the next stage is to actually figure out our front toe. When it comes to the rear, I'm using 1.5 degrees. Many vendors are actually offering it as well. 1.5 degrees when it comes to the toe of the rear. I don't like the 3, I think it's too much, and I don't like the 0, I think the car is a little bit too loose. So 1.5 degrees toe in for the rears. When it comes to the front, it's very, very misleading and hard to see it with your eyes. Surely you can and it will look straight, but sometimes it will lie to you, especially with the fisheye here that I'm recording this video right now with the setups. It looks a little bit off. What I do is I use rulers. I actually just put them on the wheels and I see exactly what the wheel is doing in relation to the chassis. Right now you guys can't see it from where you're at. I might move it just a little bit, but this looks leveled. It doesn't when I'm looking at the wheel with my bare eyes, if you will, but the ruler doesn't lie. This one actually looks leveled with the chassis, and on this side it looks about leveled with the chassis. Let me actually move you guys a little bit so you see what I'm talking about. Now we're going to set up our camber. I can see that our camber is going inside slightly, and we're going to actually level it up. I like my camber to be zeroed, but don't be fooled by your eyes. Sometimes they will fool you. What you really want to do, or at least how I do it, is I actually go to the same surface level, and then I'm using a screwdriver to actually lift the car exactly from the center, just like so, and then I see exactly what my wheels are doing. Let me actually switch it to the other camera, and you can see the angle that I didn't like. Position the same screwdriver I showed you underneath the car. Let's actually level this wheel a little bit so you see what I'm talking about. This is aluminum, this is not plastic, so you don't have that resistance here on the pivot ball threads. You will have to use either Loctite or your provided spacers, since with the plastic you can actually set up your camber and it stays. Here it's actually very, very loose because the threads are well made. You'll have to use red Loctite or the provided spacers when it comes to setting up your camber. All right, and this is what you want eventually. Let me put that screwdriver real quick. Hold on and lift off. This is about the angle that you want. You want your wheel to come up and down as level as possible, both for the front and for the rear. Okay, now that we got our camber and our toe properly in the front and in the rear, one very important thing left to do, and that is to check that under load, the front wheels are both coming off the ground at the same time. For that, you will have to press exactly in the center of the car. It's a little bit tricky, so let me see if I can actually show you guys how that looks. Let me actually zoom in a little bit just to give you guys an idea. You will have to press at the same time exactly in the center and see exactly what the front is doing. And as you can see, the front right is actually lifting a little bit before the actual left. You press just in the center. I know it's very, very hard, but you kind of have to do it. What you want to make sure, sorry for the shaky camera, is that under load, once the car squats, the front actually stays leveled and not lifting one of those wheels. Because the right is lifting a little bit too much, we're going to actually open the set screw a little bit and make sure that the front right drops a little bit, just to make sure that once we actually press, let me zoom in again. I know it's a little bit tricky to see and to focus, so bear with me. And I'm pressing, yeah, right is actually lifting. Let's open that set screw a little bit and see if we can actually balance it. So I opened the left front set screw probably about a half a turn, something in that nature. And now, because it's actually so hard for a car to lift both, it's actually not lifting. When it's actually easy for the car to lift one of those front wheels, the front will actually lift. But when it's balanced, it's actually so hard for it that you will need a lot of load for something to actually lift in the front. Let me actually, yes, that's a beautiful angle. Here we go. See, it's very, very hard for it to lift. And once it does, it actually lifts both wheels at the same time. Let's try this again. A little bit of a focusing conundrum here. It does exactly what I wanted it to do. And it lifts only right at the end, and it's balanced and leveled. That is a well set up car. When it comes to the body of the car, I'm using the Delta Plastics FC100 for most of my build. It seems to be the most efficient one when it comes to speed. I do want to give you guys a couple of pointers. At least this is how I do it. We want that body to be as tight as we can to the actual car when it comes to forward and backwards. Don't want it to be loose, just like so. Go forward like 3-4 millimeters and then mark your holes, because then it will ensure that the body is actually sitting tight and snug against the splitter. And this is exactly the tightness that I was talking about. You see, it's almost fitting, and then that's it. So now it's actually super, super tight here to the splitter. The splitter sits inside the body, holding it, sealing it beautifully. And those are with a tension, just a little bit of tension. It fits with slight pressure and it's tight. Now that the front is installed, we obviously make sure that both sides are exactly the same when it comes to the distances. And we are marking our hole with a black marker. I recommend doing the second from the outside. Make sure that your hole fits exactly right and not too big. There's just something so beautiful and so aerodynamically healthy about a body that sits snug and tight on the car. Okay, when it comes to cutting the body, let me give you a rough idea of how everything looks. Batteries on the car, like everything setup wise, camber, caster, ride height, everything. Batteries always on the car. You want to actually mimic exactly how the car is when it's actually operating. So when it comes to cutting the body, of course that everything is locked because we want the body to be solid and not move. Just want to give you guys a rough idea of how everything looks, how I cut everything here in the back and in the front when it comes to how I cut everything on the chassis here, and when it comes to everything in the front. Splitter, of course, it just sits on it, and this is ready for tape. Now, I always leave room because those wheels will bounce a lot more than you can think. Leave some room here. Obviously, as I know, the FC100 in this configuration is not as aligned, but trust me, aerodynamically, it's worth it. That's what we all do. Some of us keep the back, some of us won't, but this is about how it looks. This is obviously kept to cut the wind, both for the rear and for the front. What I just do is I go about the center of those kind of vents, right? Center here goes 45 degrees, and then I cut it from the actual chassis, leaving enough room for the wheel to bounce around. The reason I set the car at the edge of the table, it just makes it so easy to just work with scissors, because then you're pretty much in the air, you're not here. All right, and now that we have the entire body cut properly on the entire car, of course, only now we can actually make some room for the antenna. Look from both axes, this axis and this axis, and only when both are at the same exact spot you actually go down with your hole, and usually that works. I'm actually super jealous at you guys, and let me tell you why. I have a point here. So, car is done. Everything is cut, calibrated, measured, set up. Everything is good. By the way, this is the antenna we just created. Just an amazing build. Cannot wait to actually run it. For me, however, I have to wait for tomorrow. Then I have to charge the batteries, I have to charge the GPS, charge the remote, drive an hour and a half to the runway, clean the runway, and only then maybe shake my balls a little bit and go for a run. For you guys, however, it will take exactly 1 second. Ready? All right, guys, and here we are. So we're out. Actually, pretty exciting day today since we are using a brand new runway. This is a runway I've never ran on, so brand new car, brand new runway. It's gonna get pretty interesting soon. Single, that looks good. Booster is on, GPS, satellites are fine. Once you get into the run, make sure that everything is obviously connected. GPS is connected, you have enough satellites, which we do obviously. In a minute, we're gonna check if we have movement. Batteries are connected and charged, of course. And we are going to connect positive, positive, negative, negative. One more time, just to be sure. And this looks good. Beautiful. Everything looks like it's working. And steering trim is ready for me to actually trim it once I'm approaching the run. I'm going to talk about it in a minute. Everything looks good. First run ever on this car, fresh, brand new build. I just put it on the road to take a video of the thumbnail. But for whatever it's worth, let's give this a shot. So we are putting our body, as you guys remember, hopefully you guys can see it in the GoPro. The body snaps with pressure on purpose. This is how we set it up. So we're trusting the process and we're hoping that everything will work as we want it to work. So GPS, yeah, it's registering, and track start, and let's give it a shot. Now I'm trimming the car on the way to the run. That's how I'm actually saving on that's a wide runway. Yeah, there's a lot of dirt on this runway. I can already tell that's going to be a problem, but for whatever it's worth, let's run it one time, see what this car is all about, and hope for the best. And I think that here we go. Okay, that was a good run. Very straight car, beautiful, beautiful straight car. As you can see, the runway is filled with dirt, but we kept the center line pretty well. The car was actually very, very quiet, so very hard to gauge the speed. There's a lot of resistance, I can hear it. It's very, very quiet, which usually is not a good sign. It means it's too spongy. The asphalt is just too new. This is a new runway that they haven't opened yet. Yeah, you see, so this is what I'm talking about. It's just so spongy and gritty and new asphalt-y, if that's even a thing. But it's just a lot of resistance. It's just very, very hard to drive on. It's extremely interesting logs. First run ever for this car's life. 169, a lot of resistance when it comes to dirt. But here is a very interesting story that the logs are actually telling us. No plateau. So we didn't even get to full throttle. The maximum throttle we got to was 88.8%. That was the maximum throttle. So usually you will see that line. We still have that 8 seconds that we wanted from Perfect Pass, which is great and linear. Everything is great. The lines here are wonderful. This is what you really want, but we never had a straight line, a plateau. So the car never actually breathed, if you will. Voltage drop looks good. Amperage is extremely, extremely high for this run. Temperatures are high, but it's very, very hot outside today actually. So very, very hot. This runway I'm not familiar with. It's a lot shorter than the other runway, but the other runway is in the desert and it's an hour and a half drive. This one is like 35-40 minute drive from the house, and it's a new runway that they haven't opened yet, so we were trying to actually ride on it, but it's a lot shorter. Also, I can't really tell the dimensions here. Maybe I can go further with the car and let it breathe a lot more. I'm really considering not actually gearing up and not doing anything and just really doing a much longer run with the same setup, because the setup should yield about 180. I'm gonna keep Perfect Pass the same. If anything, I might actually decrease a little bit, so have like a 7-second delay, just so the car reaches plateau faster and can actually breathe a little bit more, because the breathing is where the speed is. I let the car cool down a little bit. I charged the batteries again, and I haven't changed anything. The last run was, I think, like 4,000 feet, so very, very short run. So now we're just gonna try and let it breathe as well as we can. A lot of resistance though. This new asphalt, just a lot of resistance. I'm pretty sure that this runway will be a dream in about a year, maybe 2 years. It's just gonna be a dream because everything is gonna be so compact. The rain is gonna wash it many, many times, and so far it's not. It's just a fresh asphalt and a lot of resistance, which, by the way, this is the perfect scenario. I don't want to jinx myself, but I just have to be honest. This is the perfect scenario for an ESC burn. The car is actually telling us, hey, stop. There's just too much going on. 170 miles an hour or 169 for 600 and something amps. It's just too much. Stop. And we are not stopping because we're already here, which is really not healthy. So this is one of those perfect scenarios to burn an ESC. Hopefully that does not happen. I'm going to try and push it anyway. So track and start. And here we go. Okay, a little bit better. So quiet. What an interesting runway to run on, man. It's just so quiet. It's like running on mute, and very, very difficult to see the car. Crazy. I can't see it. I just can't see it. I'm gonna go get it. I think it's safer. I'm just gonna go get it. It was breathing more, and we went farther. Same gears, same configuration, still without overcharging or heating up too much. Let's see what we got. And stop, read. 180, yeah, that's about what we wanted. Car is very, very solid, very, very straight. A beautiful build, 180 miles an hour. Once you guys run it on a better road, not such a fresh asphalt, it's probably going to be a lot faster for you guys. This is a 185, 190 mile an hour build, ready, set, and just calibrated, straight as an arrow. Just a beautiful car. So 180, just to show you guys that it's still the car, obviously. Yep, that's about it. And yeah, that's all I got.
Well, so there you have it, guys. 180 miles an hour for the second run ever on this car's life. I'm pretty proud of me for doing it and you guys for joining this how-to, which was pretty long, like a 45-minute video. The winner for this car will receive a brand new set of BSR Teals, as well as everything you've seen in the video, the body, the car, everything. I cleaned everything, oiled everything. This car is ready to go. You guys will probably get like 185, 190. So this is definitely a 190 mile an hour RC car. I just, this runway was too rough, man, just too much resistance, but this car is ready to go. And if anything, I'm actually curious who's going to win it and what is going to be your speed. The link to participate in this raffle is in the description. Enjoy and good luck. I want to thank Perfect Pass RC for providing all the parts and sponsoring this video. I want to thank Adam for coming to the runway with me and helping me. I want to thank Amit, our fulfillment center manager. I want to thank Aiden for doing all our social media. And I want to thank the Perfect Pass Stig, the know-it-all that answers all the emails that you guys sent us. Once again, I'm Ross Schifrin. Thank you so much for joining. The link to win this car is in the description.